Oh my god, I'm still not even. I just recorded 10 minutes of video without audio, and, I'm still not even recording. Hello, see, nothing. Anyway, today's video is about Magic Mountain.
Let's talk about amusement parks, like rides in the dark. Rides right here and rides all over, but mostly coasters. We'll talk about all kind of things, but mostly coasters.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Mario, and I need a haircut. Today, I am very excited to share with you all my top 10 roller coasters at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Now, while this video is going to focus on the top 10, there are quite a bit more than 10 coasters at this park, so I am going to cover everything. If you want to jump straight to the top 10, you can do so by clicking in the comments below. I have all the timestamps laid out for you guys to make it nice and easy so you don't get bored with the bad rides, or maybe you only want to watch the bad rides. Who knows? I don't know you. You could be a psychopath. Maybe. Also, I'm not going to be talking about any of the defunct rides that I've ridden at Magic Mountain, and I'm also not going to be talking about West Coast Racers because I haven't been on it, because every time I went when it was supposed to be open, guess what? It wasn't. Also not going to be talking about Magic Flyer because I'm too big to go on it. So that leaves 17 operating coasters that I've been on, and I'm going to rank all of those. Alright, at number 17, we have Speedy Gonzales Hot Rod Racers. And if you guys have watched this video, you'll know that I'm not a big fan of these Zamperla Gravity clones. To just summarize really quickly, they kind of just throw you side to side a little violently. There's no padding on the seats, so it gets very uncomfortable, not just for adults who aren't really the target demographic for these coasters, but also for kids. I've heard kids talking about how they dislike these things because they cause pain. Number 16, we have a much better kiddie coaster in Canyon Blaster, and while a lot of enthusiasts claim that this ride gives really good airtime, I haven't experienced it, but I have only gotten one ride. It was in the back row. I do love E&F Myler kiddie coasters, but this is one of the tamer ones, which does make it a better kiddie coaster, but for me personally, it's just not as thrilling, obviously, as other coasters on this list. At number 15, we have a really good family coaster in Roadrunner Express. This ride also has a decent amount of theming, which is really fun. You don't see that throughout the park too much, especially not on the coasters. This is this is a Vekoma family coaster, but it's a pretty decent ride. It's obviously targeted towards a younger demographic, but it is good enough for families to ride together. Also, fun fact, this ride came from the defunct Six Flags New Orleans, so this ride survived a hurricane. Isn't that neat? I think it is. And at 14, we have another family coaster, but this one is definitely a lot more enjoyable if you're a thrill seeker because it is an old Aero mine train. This ride is Gold Rusher. Gold Rusher has a few pops of ejector airtime if you sit in the right places, which is super fun. If you're in the front row, you get the airtime going up into the final brake run, and in the back there's this one moment after a turn. And unlike some other old Aero mine trains that can get super uncomfortable, I don't think Gold Rusher does. So overall, Gold Rusher gets a thumbs up for me. I love to ride it every time I go to the park, especially since it almost never has a wait. All right, number 13. It is a very large scale attraction, and it is supposed to be a high thrill attraction. After all, it is the tallest ride in the park, the fastest ride in the park, and one of the tallest and fastest rides in the world. You can probably guess what it is. This is Superman Escape from Krypton. Now, my main gripe with this ride is that it's kind of just boring. I know that sounds insanely picky and probably really stupid to say about a coaster that's 400 feet tall, and it's also a ride that goes 100 miles per hour, so how can I think this ride is boring? It's just glorified train track in my opinion. I hate to say that. The launch, yes, it does reach 100 miles per hour, but I think it takes about 7 seconds to get you there, so there's really no punch to the launch. It doesn't really go too high up that tower. It does give a kind of nice floating sensation, but more than half of the seats actually have an arm guard if you're on the outside seat to keep you from sticking your arm out, which really makes me feel claustrophobic. You can't put your hands up even if you wanted to. I mean, you could put one up like this, but then it just looks like you're raising your hand to answer a question. All right, class, now who can tell me what the most underwhelming ride at Six Flags Magic Mountain is? Bobby, yes.
Is it Superman Escape from Krypton?
Well done, Bobby. A+. That was stupid. But just to flip things back to a more positive note, I love the air conditioning in the queue. Even though I skip this ride almost every time I go to the park, I will go inside that queue line sometimes just to cool off. It's so nice in there. Also, it has pretty decent theming as well. So the station definitely gets 2 thumbs up for me. Ride experience, not my favorite, but to each their own. All right, now next up we have one of the older rides in the park. It's a classic, but it's also new. It's the New Revolution Classic. It's Revolution. It's the classic New Revolution. I don't know what it's called. Just Revolution. Now, it's super cool that this is the first modern looping coaster, the first looping coaster that's still operating. And I do enjoy that this is somewhat of a terrain coaster. But as far as the forces that this thing gives, it's not super great. It does have a surprisingly high top speed of 55 miles per hour. I say it's surprising because you don't really feel it. It's sort of just at the bottom of the drops and then it goes up a super big hill again. But this is a fantastic introduction to loops if you've never been on one before, especially since the upgrade to flat bars instead of over-the-shoulder restraints. I've ridden this thing with the over-the-shoulder restraints, and it was one of my least favorite rides in the park. But now it is just a super fun, enjoyable, super smooth one-loop wonder. All right, we're almost ready to get into the top 10, but we got one more ride. At number 11, we got Ninja. Hiya. Ninja is an aerodynamic suspended coaster and it is super, super fun. Depending on where you sit, how fast the train's going, how many people are in the train, you can either get a really swingy ride or a not so swingy ride. But aside from the swinging aspect, again, one of the things that I like about this ride is the terrain. It goes up and down a hillside quite a bit. Another thing that I like about it is that it goes over the park's log flume jet stream. Not only does it add a nice scenery element to have flowing water going by you on the coaster, but also when you go under the log flume, it can splash you, which is really, really interesting to have almost a water effect on this ride. Unintentional maybe, but still really, really fun. All right, we've done it. We finally made it into the top 10. And to kick things off, we have Scream. Scream is one of my least favorite floorless coasters. I do really like the layout, but that's kind of it. My biggest problem with this ride, and the thing that really keeps me from appreciating it, is how shaky it seems to have gotten. It does have an awesome first loop that is massive. It has an insanely snappy 0G roll. And then the rest of the layout is pretty generic B&M, but still really fun to go upside down 7 times. Or 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 7 times. But it's fine, you know. If they could find a way to make it smoother, it would definitely be a lot higher up on this list. It really used to be one of my favorite coasters at the park. Next up, we got another B&M. This one I actually used to dislike, and now I really enjoy it. Batman the Ride. This is your typical Batman the Ride B&M invert. Although I will say, out of the 6 B&M inverts that I have been on, this is definitely my favorite one. It just seems to run the smoothest and fastest, and it runs very consistent as well. I don't really need to say too much because I'm sure you guys have all been on one of these, but I do love the intensity. The only reason it's not higher up is because sometimes it feels like it's going to rip my feet off, and it's kind of uncomfortable. So overall, Batman the Ride is good. I just have to really be in the mood for an intense ride to get my fullest enjoyment out of it. Next up is a ride that, despite having been to the park multiple times throughout the last 2 years, I haven't been on in the last 2 years, unfortunately, due to the retracking and West Coast Racers having the area closed. This is Apocalypse. Now, the reason I mentioned that it's been 2 years since I've been on this, some of my most recent rides on it, this ride was kind of running at its absolute worst. It was super shaky, running very slow, feeling like it was going to valley before the final brake run almost every single ride. So that's kind of the last impression I've had of it. They've since done retracking on it. Pretty much everyone is saying that it's running better than it ever has. I would love to experience it, but since my memories of it are just not that good, it is on the lower end of my top 10. However, this thing does have a really fun layout. Just like most GCIs, very great pacing, some good pops of ejector airtime, good laterals. The only downside layout wise is the ride kind of fizzles out at the end, and it's not the longest ride in the world, but really fun. And I do look forward to getting a ride on the retracked version, hopefully soon. Next up, we have another looping B&M. My goodness, does this park like its B&Ms. At number 7, we have Riddler's Revenge. Now, this is one of my absolute favorite layouts of any B&M I've ever been on. I honestly don't know why, I think it's because compared to other loopers, it does also throw a couple of floater airtime moments in. I feel like it has a nice variety, and a lot of the elements tend to be pretty forceful. Now, most people don't like standing coasters, but I feel like for Riddler's Revenge, the standing element really adds to the ride experience. I mentioned the fact that this ride has a couple of airtime moments earlier, and if you can time it right and you jump when the train is going over these airtime moments, you'll actually have your feet lift up off of the ground, and that's not really something you could do on any other coaster in the world that I'm aware of anyway. My one issue with this ride is that it can tend to run a little rough, and with those bulky over-the-shoulder restraints, it can be pretty uncomfortable. I have had my fair share of headaches as a result of being on this ride, but overall, I really enjoy it. If it was consistently smooth, it would definitely be higher up on my list, but this is definitely not a coaster you should miss if you're at the park. At number 6, we got another one that might be surprising that it is not higher up, but this is Full Throttle. Full Throttle has probably one of the best, if not the best, hang time moments on any coaster I've been on, with that first massive loop. At the time of it opening, it was the tallest loop in the world, and I think to this day it's still the second tallest, so absolutely massive. You do get a decent launch, definitely not my favorite launch in the world. It could be a little more forceful, but it does the trick. Does the job? I don't know. Now, people complain that this ride is short, and while I do kind of agree, I think this ride offers more than people give it credit for. After that loop, you go into a fun turn, up a hill over the pathway on Samurai Summit into a dive loop. The dive loop can be kind of forceful if you're sitting in the front row to really push you into your seat. And then you hit the brakes in the tunnel, which it's super cool that this thing has a tunnel. The reverse launch is really fun because you get another moment of hang time. Going up that backwards launch into the dive loop again, you kind of float there for half a second, and then you get crazy speed going through the third launch. And if you're sitting in the front row, you'll get an ejector pop going on top of the loop on the top hat, and in the back row you'll get ejector airtime flying down. And then you hit the brakes, which again is another complaint that people have, that the brakes are on the drop. But the good part of the drop is not the bottom, it's the top where you're actually coming out of your seat. So I don't really have an issue with the brakes being where they are. Yes, this ride is a little short, but it is still super fun. But cracking into the top 10, we have Nope, we're already in the top 10. Cracking into the top 5, we have Viper. Now, if you absolutely despise this ride, I can completely understand why. I hated it as a kid. For me personally, now that the shoulder restraints actually rest on my shoulders, I don't get any head banging. The ride actually runs on the rails really smoothly. It's just the transitions that kind of add to the shaky feel of the ride. But if you can get over all the negative aspects of this ride, it is insanely forceful. It is so much fun. As far as elements that this ride has to offer, you have a really fun first drop that's sitting in the back row. You get a little bit of floater, and then all of a sudden you're just whipped to your left, or left. And then you pick up really good speed. I'm not exactly sure where the top speed is, but I think it's somewhere around 70 miles per hour. You take all that speed up into the first vertical loop, which if you're sitting in the front, you're going to get slammed into your seat, which I don't like. But in the back, going through it, you're going to get yanked out of it, which is really weird to be upside down and then feel yourself accelerating. Really unique feeling, which is one of the biggest reasons why I love this coaster. You're going to go into a turn. You're going to do 2 more loops that feel almost identical to the first. Then you're going to go up into the mid-course brake run, where if you're sitting in the front, you're going to get ejector, back you're going to get floater, super fun. And those brakes slow you to almost a complete stop, which would normally be a bad thing on most coasters, but for the last 4 inversions, it's actually fantastic. The first element that you're going to go into after that mid-course is a bat wing, and you're going to get incredible hang time. This is why being slowed down is actually a good thing. Coming out of that, you're going to hit another set of trims, so you're going to slow down even more and go into the double corkscrew finale of the ride, which again offers fantastic hang time. So again, if you can get over the potentially painful aspects of Viper, it truly is one of the best rides in the park. All right, we got another controversial opinion here. Goliath is my number 4 coaster at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Now, a lot of people crap on this ride because it's not a B&M hyper, but if you've seen a picture of Goliath, you should not go into it expecting copious amounts of airtime. It literally only has 1 airtime hill, so why would you get airtime airtime on this ride. Speaking of that one airtime hill though, probably my single favorite floater airtime moment on any coaster. It really is that good, especially if you don't get stapled. You're really just floating out of your seat for a good 2, maybe 3 seconds. This is another one where the mid-course stops you, and people complain about that, but people would pass out every single ride if the mid-course brakes did not slow you down because of the Helix finale in that spaghetti bowl section. Super forceful, probably the most consistent, forceful, positive moments that I've ever felt, although I haven't been on Intimidator 305. But Goliath does positive G's very, very well. I definitely don't think that this ride deserves the dismissal that it kind of gets, but it's also not the best ride in the park, so number 4, good spot for it. Now we're getting into the elite coasters, if you will. I'm pretty sure all of the coasters from here on out are in my top 10, so Magic Mountain has a fantastic top 3. And at number 3, we have Tatsu. Tatsu is, I think, maybe still, maybe not. At the time of it opening and when I first rode it, it was the tallest and fastest B&M flying coaster. And my goodness, does it feel tall. I actually know multiple people that are afraid of the chain lift alone just because of looking down how high up you are, looking into the rapids down below. Throughout the entire ride, you're super high up, so it feels like you're really flying. I mean, it is probably the most surreal coaster I've ever been on to this day. I still can't get over how high up you are. As far as elements, this ride doesn't do anything too special. It has a few corkscrews and zero-G rolls, inline twists, whatever you want to call them. One thing that people really rave about on this ride is the pretzel loop, which yes is super intense and I really enjoy it. Just at the bottom it is so shaky, so it can sometimes give me a headache. It would be awesome if they were able to just retract that part of the ride, because then this could easily be my number 2 or maybe even number 1 in the park. That's how much I love this ride. Next up is X2. At the number 2 spot, very fitting. This is by far one of the craziest, if not the craziest rides that I've ever been on. It could easily be at the number 1 spot for this park. It has a nearly vertical drop, which if you're in the front row is one of the most incredible views of a first drop, because since you're sitting on the sides of the track and facing straight down with nothing above or below you or hardly anything around you at all, it is insane to just feel that open, staring straight at the ground nearly 200 feet in the air. Or if you're in the back row, though you don't get as good a view of that drop, you are getting pulled down so hard. It is terrifying if you've never been on it before, but even if you have, like I've been on this thing 50 to 100 times at this point, and it still scares the crap out of me sitting in the back row. And that first drop is just the beginning of the crazy experience. You're going to flip multiple times throughout this ride, and it's from your seat rotating, not just going through an inversion, so it is very unique feeling. And then also towards the end, there is a fire effect, which is super cool when it's working. It feels like it's going to burn your face off. Only downside to this ride is, yeah, it is insanely rough. Like, it is one of the roughest coasters I've ever been on, but somehow I've been able to ride it lately without feeling in pain afterwards. So if you are able to find the right way to ride this thing, it won't beat you up that badly. But I don't know that I've been on a more intense, insane roller coaster than X2. Absolutely fantastic. But as of now, I don't think it is quite good enough to overthrow number 1 on this list, which is Twisted Colossus. Twisted Colossus was the first RMC I'd ever ridden, and my goodness, it took my breath away. I did not know coasters were capable of doing the things that it does. Now it's not as impressive to me since I've been on, I think, 6 RMCs, but it definitely still holds its own. One of the things that I want to just knock out of the way before I talk about anything else is the racing element. I have not gotten a racing ride on this in 2 years. I've had multiple rides on it where they finish checking the restraints really quickly and then just wait a super long time to dispatch it. I don't know if maybe the ride system is not lining them up properly, but whatever the case may be, I don't really rank this coaster with the racing element included. That being said, the ejector airtime on this thing is fantastic. Both drops on both sides of the course, the green and the blue, fantastic airtime in the back row. The speed hill is kind of fun floater. Going up into the high five element, you get great ejector on the blue side. Coming down off of that, you get great ejector on the blue side. Overall, I prefer the blue side just because it has better airtime, but the green side does have that awesome zero-G stall, which was the first zero-G stall I experienced. I'm like, how can you be upside down for that long and still be going that fast? So incredible. And then really good bunny hops going into the end of each course. Now, I will say I don't like that second lift now since it doesn't race anymore. It is such a dead spot. So it definitely makes it not as good as other RMCs that may not be as long ride duration wise overall, but they do have better pacing because the full coaster is not broken up by, I think it's over a minute of lift hill. But again, still, this ride is fantastic. I think it has like just as much ejector, if not more ejector than any other coaster I've been on. But this ride is still fantastic. For now, it's my favorite at Magic Mountain. We'll see if X2 can beat it out because, man, that thing is fantastic. But thank you guys so much for watching. Leave your personal ranking of Magic Mountain's coasters down below if you want to. Go ahead and give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and of course 2 thumbs down if you didn't like it. Subscribe for more content like this. I'm going to be doing a Knott's Berry Farm ranking pretty soon. Go ahead and share the video to your enthusiast friends to show them how stupid my opinions are and how much you disagree with them and how much you want to hate watch the video. As long as you watch the video, I don't care. Even if it's a hate watch, it's fine by me as long as someone's watching the video. But with all that being said, this is the end of the video.